There's about 800 operators that had a European VASP that nowadays they cannot operate anymore. It really costs a lot to have the unlicensed provider that will blow up after 2 months. I'm going to be more expensive than the unlicensed provider or those who operate in the gray area. But most of the cost for these guys are coming later down the line. We're getting some cases where people have got burned and they come knocking on our doors. Say, hey, we had some issues, either legal issues, or maybe they went insolvent or bankrupt or ran away with the money. People are thinking, once we offer the product, like we did, ZBX, everyone's going to flock to us. No, it just doesn't happen. Crypto is not going to be a substitute for the traditional financial services.
Hello, welcome back to Odys podcast. My name is Aneta Samkow and my guest today is Dave Pulis, co-founder of ZBX exchange. And we're talking about crypto payments in iGaming. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting.
Thank you. So Dave, can you actually tell us a little bit about ZBX today? Like how big is the operation? Who is the typical client? What do you do day to day?
So ZBX came from around 2018. At the time, it was the blockchain island of Malta. So it was very lucky for me that I was happening to be here. Today, we have about 35 people that are the core of the business. And then we have other people who support the business and third-party providers who help with the business. Most of the team is in Malta. So the compliance team, the AML, some of the tech team. Then we have a bit of in the UK. Also, we have the holding company in Switzerland. They support with the CSP, and also a bit more around the world, Sweden and many other places as well. Nowadays at BX, we gave the information for MFSA to drop the retail clients. We stopped doing the retail because for a small exchange, it's quite hard to go for that market. And we're concentrating mostly on the B2B and the institutions. When I say B2B and institutions, the client would be a gaming company that wants to process crypto, an institution, for example, like a fund that wants to access the market, or maybe a family office as well. And recently, within the last few months, we realized that a lot of fintechs, like EMIs, etc., who want to access the market are coming to us as well.
Okay. So it's not just one niche, different verticals.
It is different verticals that are very similar to each other that I mentioned. It's like institutions or other entities that want to use our service. And we dropped the last part, which is the retail, which takes so much work. And unless you are one of the larger exchanges, then the economies of scale need to be there to be able to service those clients. So then we drop them, and now we're one of the most focused B2B entities, MiCA licensed, probably in Europe.
So what do these clients have in common? What do they have in common?
I have been in crypto since 2013, but it happened this way. So different it is. The idea back then in 2018 with the Maltese blockchain island to what we have now. At the time, we thought, let's do an exchange, licensed exchange, and everyone who wants to be compliant will flock to us. I was only partially correct, Thank God we did it. But for the last 6 years, it's been a constant struggle. Because we've been building the infrastructure behind it. We wanted to be fully compliant from day one, AML checks, transaction monitoring, the full stack. Nowadays, we're doing this interview on 30th of June.
Yes.
So on this day, on this week, the MiCA transition period, the market in crypto assets, which consolidates all of Europe, crypto or virtual assets service providers, comes into force. So in the last 2 months, maybe 3 months, we got a lot of requests from about, don't quote me on the numbers, but there's about 800 operators that had a European VASP that nowadays they had a lot of volume that they cannot operate anymore. So we got a lot of calls. Hey, Dave, we have this operation. Can we use your license? It's a bit more simple. It's a bit more complicated than can I use your license? So we are in a position now whereby we suffered for those like 7 years, and everyone is coming to us because of the MiCA regulation and is waking up to say, hey, we are in dire straits. Can we use your license? And we built the infrastructure before people had the need for the infrastructure. And we realized that there was a lot of education that needed to happen for people to realize, hey, what is the difference between an unlicensed provider or a licensed provider, that we can speak more at depth. And most of the industry now is converging to say, you know what? It really costs a lot to have the unlicensed provider that will blow up after 2 months, whereby there's no transaction monitoring, whereby if I'm an operator, my, let's say, gaming operator or gaming regulator is going to call me, say, hey, what about your counterparty list? So we're in a very good position now. But it was a totally different idea from where we started to where we are now. Now we're more of an institutional grade layer that we offer other entities, rather us considering ourselves as an operator. We have our clients, for sure, but we provide the infrastructure layer, and we have the fintechs, we have the other big entities, family offices that come to us to use ZBX as an infrastructure layer. So maybe that sums it up. ZBX is nowadays an infrastructure layer.
I see. Very interesting. And yes, ZBX is MiCA license alongside like very few other companies, including like Circle, Coinbase, OKX, Bybit. That's like a really short list for a small exchange among all these giants. Can you tell us, how did you get there, and what did it cost you in time and effort and decisions that you have to make to become licensed?
So having started in 2018, we were under a different regime. Malta was, as I said, the blockchain island, a lot of fanfare. It worked well, but first we had to be compliant with the Maltese regulatory infrastructure. There was many who did it, as you know, around Europe. There were many different regimes. Malta was, pretty safe to say, one of the hardest regimes out there when it comes to the compliance requirements, capitalization requirements, so on and so forth. So when MiCA came into force, there was Malta and one investment bank, as far as I'm aware, directly from, the ECB, that had a fast track to change their VASP license to a MiCA. So if you go back and see the list, who got their MiCA license first, it's mostly Maltese exchanges. And we were, I think, the second one out of those lists as well. I think the first one was crypto.com. I'm not sure. Don't quote me. They had a lot more resources than us, but within the same week, we got the MiCA license. And if you want to compare the two, an interesting fact, it's that the requirements that we had in Malta, some of the requirements were less onerous than the MiCA requirements. So especially, for example, specific facts. Capital requirements under the Maltese regulatory regime were the higher regulatory requirement than MiCA. So we were very well prepared. So the transition for us, we didn't even have to avail ourselves of the transition period, which is now as we're speaking. We got the license pretty quickly, but it was a very painful process, which, looking back now, where the industry is converging, we say, thank God or thank the people, who are supporting the business, because most of the people who are operating in the space, iGaming operators, people who want to process crypto, are realizing finally that it is much better to have a properly regulated infrastructure than to go with the unregulated guys that give you the business card and is the cheapest option out there. This is different than, for example, going for web hosting, where you check downtime, check the API, and check the pricing. There's not much between them, right? In crypto, it's a bit different. The card, the business card, says nothing, because I'm going to be more expensive than the unlicensed provider or those who operate in the gray area, right? But the most of the cost for these guys are coming later down the line. If you're not doing compliance monitoring, transaction monitoring properly, later down the line, maybe your operator, regulator if you're in gaming, comes and asks you questions and you cannot track back, what about if funds are locked? If we're doing the payment processing for you, there is no recourse. There's no one to call. You are down the gutter. With a regulated exchange, what we're giving you is the peace of mind. We operate also in payment processing, the traditional one. And the payment processing, as most people in the industry know, it's based on trust. Can I trust this guy? If something happens, is he going to run away with my money? If something happens, insolvency, what does happen? We offer that peace of mind so that people can operate.
Exactly. A lot of unlicensed operators comes with problems later, that they're cheaper at the beginning, but there's the cost. Can you tell us more examples of the stories that you have seen from people being burned by unlicensed operator?
Let me expand a bit on what we were saying, for example, on the payments provision. Since within the last year, we expanded operations. Apart from ZBX, we also do the fiat side of things. What we always do within payment processing is, hey, I want to process payments. I'm getting my acquirer. Lots of people try to get smart when they are doing processing. They try to mix maybe some of the gray area operations with the white operations. Maybe that they do some screw up within the operations that they're doing. And what happens is that most of the time they get their funds locked. There is maybe some, so let's summarize it. Sometimes they get their funds locked when it's their problem. They did some erroneous transactions, no transaction monitorings, funds locked. You're working with a provider. The provider goes insolvent. Something happens with the acquirer. Who are you going to call? Most of the time, the acquirers are in the same location where you are. You cannot go and knock. Hey, what happened to my money? There is no recourse.
So they just disappear.
If they're insolvent and they have so many clients that they hold assets for, it's impossible to get your money back. Also, if some of your clients that you're processing payments for did some nefarious activity, some illegal activity, it falls 100% on you as the operator. The other problem within the sphere is if you use an operator that's processing your crypto that themselves did something wrong, it's also going to fall on you as the operator as well. So in finance, we say the counterparty risk. You're carrying the risk of all of the counterparties that you are dealing with. When you deal with a regulated exchange, if first thing you ask is, hey, where is your license? What AML checks, sanction screening, transaction monitoring you do. And also, very importantly, it's where do you keep the funds? So, for example, us as a regulated exchange would have third-party providers that hold the funds, so safe custody. And the safe custody itself, if something happens, it is similar to the European banking infrastructure. They would be insured. So in Europe, we have the 100,000, investor compensation scheme. In this case, it's actually private insurance with our counterparty. So if you put your money with a regulated exchange, something happens to the custody of assets, or something happens to ZBX, your assets are still safe because they are with the regulated counterparty that is also insured. And that is something that most people, when they go to choose an operator, they don't even consider. It's not even one of the questions. They just look at the card. Oh, okay, the rate is cheaper than that guy that is regulated. So let's go with this one. Why pay the extra money?
Exactly. I was about to ask, why are they still choosing unlicensed operators? What are they thinking?
I think the education that we mentioned a bit earlier, the education that we had to get first ourselves many years ago, and that we are educating the market, is that it costs in the long run much less to pay that bit of extra for us to be able to do all the transaction monitoring, all the AML screening, all our compliance checks as a full stack, and also make sure that your assets are safeguarded. And we're seeing that now most of the operators are waking up, and also because MiCA transition period is ending, obviously there's not much choice as well. But I think the education has worked well. And I think in the next 1 to 2 years, probably closer to 2 years, we're getting more people waking up to what is happening. We're going to look back and see the 2018 to 2023 period as the Wild West.
Okay. So have you actually seen many of your clients who came to you recently being burned from working with unlicensed operators?
It's an interesting question. Obviously, we've been operating for about 8 years now. I recall the times when we used to go and knock on the door, say, hey, we're providing the licensed infrastructure, so on and so forth. And people were not interested. What's happening now is we're getting some people who, quite a few cases, where people have got burnt and they come knocking on our doors, say, hey, we need your services. The provider that we had some issues, either legal issues, or maybe they had funds blocked, or maybe they went insolvent or bankrupt or ran away with the money. Also happened quite often, they're running away with the money.
Oh, wow.
And they're coming to knock on our door. So obviously now the merging of the industry with the education is working in our favor. But yes, we're always going to be more expensive than someone who just hosts wallets, does an exchange and sends you the crypto.
Of course. Because there is a cost to compliance, like licensing, KYC, infrastructure, or the whole stack. So what does that realistically add to the per transaction cost? And why do you think the operators should care?
Let me delve deeper into what we just discussed.
Yes.
And right now we're doing, instead of doing the spot trading, we're doing RFQ. RFQ is request for quote. It's like when you go to your trader and say, hey, I want to trade this much, give me a price. So that is the model we're going for as a B2B exchange. So as an RFQ, we can get very good pricing as well because we get large batch orders. The difference between the pricing of the unlicensed and the licensed, and to delve a bit deeper into what we just said, is the cost that is not visible on the calling card or the business card.
Yes.
Most of these costs are the operator that is servicing you going bust. That is an operation, a huge operational cost for you. If there is transaction monitoring that should happen, but your own regulator, let's say you're an iGaming operator, and let's say the MGA, the Malta Gaming Authority, says, hey, what about this transaction from these guys? What happened here? Can you go back and show us? If you go with an unlicensed operator, there's no transaction monitoring. There's nothing you can show. And the fines, this is a very interesting point, actually, we should. The regulators now are going to go for the operators that are still advertising their services to the people out there. So the first one that are going to get caught is the operators that are advertising their services. Why? Because they're the visible ones. And the operator, we're very close to the operator as well, wants something that gets as much limelight as possible at first. You know, they want to set an example. And if they're going after an operator that has been operating, for example, 2 years without a license, the fine is usually based on the amount of volume that you have been processing. So if you have been processing volume of substantial amount of volume, a mid-sized operator, let's say 10 to 30 million is a mid-sized operator. That's only the crypto side of things, obviously.
Yes.
They're going to look back at all the operations that you did and give you a fine based commensurate on those operations. So the fine that you get is going to be a killer.
Oh, wow.
Then obviously they will go after all the ones that are not advertising, because there's also that thing of reverse solicitation as well. But the first one is I'm advertising as well. With MiCA, there's no such thing as then reverse solicitation in some cases. And the other important things as well is to keep a proper bookkeeping and record of all the transaction itself, also for all your other counterparties. When you offer payment services, it's a web using the services of many institutions. And all of these institutions need to speak together when you go to someone like, for example, ZBX, we have the infrastructure layer where all of these operations are connected together. So I'm not just giving you a service, for example, on transaction monitoring, AML, compliance, speaking with the regulator, but everything is under one umbrella where everything is being given as a technology stack, as a regulatory stack, where you can rely on us. Otherwise, if you have to do the work yourself, it would be impossible to go back and say, let me chase this transaction. Let me get the details of what we think is a PEP 6 months down the line. Then it's too late. Working with a regulated exchange, we're going to get, I wouldn't give you a number of a transaction cost, but going to be a bit higher, 100%. But that small transaction cost is going to leave you in business more than the next 6 months. You can build on it, concentrate on what you're doing, increase your operations, and leave the dirty work or the hard work to the operator.
So what is the typical mistakes that you see iGaming operators make when they try to evaluate licensed and unlicensed companies?
They don't ask 3 questions. So when we're speaking to someone, I get a good idea what someone is after as well. When they come and ask about the pricing, it's fair. What is your pricing? But we look for 3 questions that are usually asked.
Okay.
What is your compliance, there's AML, transaction monitoring look like? They're boring questions, but these are unfortunately the industry, right? So I hope I will not bore you. So our compliance stack, how does it work? The safety of assets. So where do you hold your funds? So that is different than the first question. It's something completely different. So as I said, we don't hold the funds ourselves in some cold wallet as we used to do in the past and try to safeguard, but we have certified counterparties as well. And those certified counterparties are also insured. So same like holding your money in a bank, up to a certain extent, you get actually it's better because the bank gives you insurance on the funds in Europe up to 100K. There was a compensation scheme. With us, you have the insurance on all the funds. Most of the regulated crypto operations all work the same now. They use the licensed operators, most of them usually sometimes from the US, that are big enough to sustain hits in case something happens. And the third is also how we can communicate with all their different vendors to integrate everything under one stack. Because obviously sometimes operations can be a bit more complicated than just say, okay, you give me crypto, I put your widget. Usually it's a bit more complicated than that. So we also speak with the operator. They have the gaming operator, they have a question, they can come and we are able to supply the information as well. If they ask those 3 questions, we know that they know the value that we are giving. If they don't, we sit down, we say, hey, you know what? These are our pricing, this is how we work, but this is how we justify our pricing. And this is how we guide you so that you can grow. And the responsibility then is on us.
Awesome. This is very helpful. I'm sure a lot of operators can benefit from that. Thank you for sharing these insights. Alchemy Pay invested in ZBX in October 2025. What does that partnership unlock for ZBX that ZBX couldn't do on its own?
As I mentioned a bit earlier, personally, I have this exposure also to some other industries as well. And then we realized as a company, if we want to cater for the operators that want to get crypto as well, usually it's coupled as well with some of the fiat infrastructure. Can be at fiat, processing of fiat, maybe acquiring, card acquiring, and other services. Also, Alchemy Pay are also very good within different regions in Asia and other regions. So it was only natural that we get a very strategic partnership whereby instead of just offering the crypto operations, we also start offering some of the fiat operational infrastructure as well. So that is one, some of the fiat operation, and to open different markets as well. Because we were not very cognizant, very smart about operations in different regions when it comes to fiat. let's say, for example, some regions in Asia or some other regions where we were not familiar with. So the partnership was mostly a strategic one. Obviously, there was the monetary element, but Alchemy Pay helps us be better prepared to offer a full stack of services, be it fiat and crypto, to a much wider audience. So it cements us to be able to take much wider geographical scope, and also, instead of just wider geographical scope, also much more deep integration into different payments that can be offered as well.
And this year, actually, everybody says it's the year of stable coins and RWA assets, and that crypto and TradFi are really converging. So from your perspective, like, what does TradFi still get wrong about crypto, and what does crypto still get wrong about TradFi?
Well, interesting question, because although I've been crypto since 2013, since the first conference in San Jose, I was there. I'm a finance guy by profession, right? A pure finance guy. I was lucky as well to work in a stockbroker when we had the first Bitcoin fund in the world. This was back in 2013. And I remember trying to sell the whole crypto thing, the whole crypto story to institutional investors, retail as well, but mostly it was all institutional because obviously we had a fund as well. At the time, for disclosure, I didn't know what I was doing. I was a finance guy being introduced to crypto, being thrown in the limelight, but through time, obviously, we learn. So I've been there through the whole process as well. I think traditional finance have come a long way since 2018. I did a lot of interviews 2018 speaking about this in particular. And most of the stuff I used to say back then actually still applies nowadays. The only thing that we didn't see coming was the central bank digital currencies as well back then. Now, interestingly enough, as I said, we're doing fiat payments, doing some acquiring, we're doing things, and we're doing also the crypto payments as well. We have some interest in some EMIs as well to grow the infrastructure at large. And I was having a meeting, not sure I should mention who, but it's a CEO of a bank, right, that we work close with as well. I said something that rings very well. He said, you guys in crypto have been suffering for a long time. We've been making all the money, EMIs or other traditional finance institutions, but you guys, especially, we're operating in Europe, so I'm speaking on a European perspective.
Yes.
And the European Union is really talking about pushing now this Eurocoin, its CBDC, right? Settlement, we know, it's going to be much easier when there's CBDC involved. So when the CBDCs come into play, why shall I operate on the fiat infrastructure when it's a settlement, especially if it goes cross-border outside of Europe, it's going to be T+2 on average, right? Unless you're SEPA, instant, etc. Once there's CBDCs, anywhere around the world, settlement is instant everywhere. There's no T+, wherever you are. So my friend, the CEO, told me, you guys are going to be the people that EMIs knock on. We used to knock on the doors of EMIs. Can we get your services? Because people are using fiat, not crypto exchanges. Now it's changing with the entrance of CBDCs. Most EMIs are wanting to do partnerships with cryptocurrency or, let's say, MiCA licensed exchanges. Because once the CBDCs are adopted and settlement are instant, there's a much easier choice to go for the crypto route rather than the fiat route as well. So I think we're going to see, going forward, a lot of the cryptocurrency exchanges that, I don't know how to say, that survived, that are still operating here, getting valuations that is, 20, 30x of what it is now. What cryptocurrency also, guys, get wrong about traditional finance as well, and I've been with the OGs back in 2018, right? Time of the Silk Road, right? So not delve too much on that. It's that people are thinking, once we offer the product, like we did, ZBX, everyone's going to flock to us. No, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. Crypto is not going to be a substitute for the traditional financial services, but crypto is going to be a stack, an add-on, and sometimes maybe a substitute to traditional financial services. The more we go forward, most of the elements of crypto services to end clients, to institutions, is going to get regulated anyway. So that crypto element, instead of just being a Chinese wall in between, we're going to have the crypto element move closer to the fiat side, because the regulators are going to force you to regulate as well. So it's not a Wild West, say, we have such a technology stack that we don't need fiat anymore. We don't need those pesky banks. That was the talk back in 2018. Nowadays, we're getting regulated. We are talking with banks. We are doing, as you saw, investments like with Alchemy Pay and others, and merging together to do one service that, instead of substituting, it's complementing.
Okay.
I don't want to be generic when I speak, because there's so many moving parts. What I taught 3 years ago was different than I taught 6 years ago. There's different than I taught 8 years ago, because the landscape is changing, right? And probably as you have an interview in 5 years' time, or even just 2, it's crypto.
Yeah.
So it's very compressed. We're going to have something different to say as well. But as a general rule, crypto and TradeFi as well, traditional finance, are converging together, and we're going to see a lot of interesting stuff happening in the mergers and acquisition space as well. Give it less than 2 years' time.
Exactly. I wanted to ask you, in the near future, where do you see the crypto payments in iGaming are going?
Very interesting as well. As we touched upon a bit, we're delving into the acquiring space, so processing of cards. Also very interesting is the very recent addition to us to do APMs. APMs are alternative payment methods. So for example, in Holland, they have Ideal. In Germany, they have Bank Contact. So all the regions have something that works for their region. So we are integrating all of these APMs. We're integrating also acquiring. We're adding also the crypto element, which we had from day one. We're putting everything under one roof. So when a gaming company comes to us and they say, I process mostly APMs because we don't get so many chargebacks. That's fine. Let's shake hands. Let's do business. I'm doing acquiring. Let's do business. I want to do crypto. Let's do business. I want to do the fiat. Let's do business together. So what's happening right now is we're getting all of these small parts, well, they're all big parts of the equation, putting them under one roof, so that we're trying to achieve to be a one-stop shop. That, let's say, I've been in finance for 25 years. So 25 years ago, I used to look at JP Morgan. I used to look at Goldman Sachs. I have friends of mine working there. We used to do some business together. And I used to look at them as the kings of the financial world. Now I try to think, but I have to say I'm biased, right? Because I run a cryptocurrency exchange with my team. I think in the next couple of years, we're going to be the conglomerates of the space, because we are integrating all of those pieces of the equation and trying to cover 100% of it on the institutional side to be able to process those. And it's going to be hard for the big guys, for the AMIs to do it, for the banks to do it, because they need the MiCA, as we explained in the previous questions, to be able to do it. So the one-stop shop for payments and operations is a MiCA licensed exchange.
And coming back to MiCA, actually, I was wondering, since it's so new, who do you think, how will the enforcement look like? Who do you think will get hit first? How bad will it get? When will they start enforcing it?
I think they will start enforcing it from today is Saturday, starting Monday.
Oh, really? Already? That
yes. I mean, MiCA sets forth coincidentally at this time where we're sitting. I touched upon it before. They're going to go for the ones that are still advertising their services. So I don't have a license. I'm operating in the gray or the black. Am I advertising my services? Those are absolutely the first one that are going to be targeted. Then it's going to be the ones that are not advertising their services, but are still offering their services without a license. And as we mentioned earlier, if you've been operating for 2 years, they're going to go look back, look at the volume and the time you've been operating, and give you a commensurate fine. And those fines are going, as I said, to be a killer. So if you've been operating for a week, usually it's about volume. The fine is going to be very little. So I'm not sure if that answers the questions, but anyone who doesn't have a license, I would suggest you can get in contact with us. We can do transition also of your business to get back on a MiCA licensed exchange. We're also doing CASP, interesting to mention it now, with all of those, let's say 800 exchanges that are losing their license or cannot use their VASP. We started putting all of the elements and doing CASP as a service. We call it a blue label because the white label is the technology, but the blue label, we run the compliance, the AML, all the infrastructure, all the operations to be able to have to work. So if there's any exchanges out there or any providers, operators that are not compliant and want to be compliant, you can just give us a call and inquire about our CASP as a service, blue label, and if there's a will, there's a way, and probably we can offer this service as well. That's what we're doing now at the end of the day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this great discussion. And yes, we will put the link to ZBX in this description. So if you want to get in touch with Dave, you can do that easily because LinkedIn gets spammy, right? So
I get too much LinkedIn spam, but we'll provide places where they can
So directly through the website, we will have the link in the description. Thank you so much for the discussion.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.